ready for a blast from the past. We're going back to 2010.
2000, yeah.
The iPad was like the new thing, and Facebook, everyone was on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we've got some stuff to go through here. We've got a customer cycle graphic,
Hmm.
whole section on brand equity. We'll be talking about tools of the time, even a case study involving electric programmable cookers.
Slow cookers. Wow. In Tuna 10 already going digital.
Yeah. So let's start with this customer cycle graphic. Basically what it does is it outlines the stages that a customer goes through from like awareness to interest, evaluation, trial, adoption, engagement, and then ultimately loyalty.
I mean, that framework's still pretty much how we think about it today, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What I think is interesting here is the emphasis on adding value at every single stage. Like, it's not just about getting the sale, it's about building a relationship with the customer, giving them helpful content,
Yeah.
making sure they have a good experience, the service is good, the website's easy to use. That's what builds trust, and that's how you turn customers into loyal fans.
And then they go to this whole case study about Chanel
Hmm.
and basically just talking about brand equity. Chanel is a great example of a brand with strong brand equity. Like, it's high quality, high price. Everybody recognizes the logo. And this was kind of a new challenge for luxury brands.
Right, because the online world was still kind of new territory for them.
Exactly. Like, how do you translate that feeling of an exclusive boutique, to a website? How do you make sure your message is consistent across all these new online platforms?
That's a good question. It's not like they could just open up a Chanel shop on every website.
Right. So one of the things they were doing was something called content syndication, which is basically just strategically spreading your content across the internet. So again, it goes back to what you were saying about having a plan, like really integrating that technology into your overall marketing strategy.
Yeah, you can't just throw up a website or a Facebook page and expect it to magically work. You need a strategy. It all has to tie together. It's got to be one brand, one message, online and offline.
Now, the presentation dives in to understanding your customer. And they were already talking about using tools like YouTube, Google Analytics, Google AdWords, even SurveyMonkey.
Wow, so some of those tools have been around for a while. But the core message there is definitely timeless. It's all about knowing your customer inside and out. What are their needs? What are their pain points? What motivates them to buy? The more you understand them, the better you can target your marketing to really resonate with them.
And then they go into, they kind of break down the customer purchase decision process into these 5 stages, like research, product selection, purchase, need for education, and need for extended information.
Okay, so those are the steps people go through when they're thinking about buying something.
And they use Amazon and Halfords as examples of companies catering to customers in these different stages.
Interesting. So what jumped out at you from those examples?
Well, Amazon was already, a giant back then.
Yeah.
And they were really great at giving customers like tons of product information, reviews, everything to help people, research and compare different products. And then Halfords, which is I think they're a UCO retailer. They're all about cars and bikes. They were focusing on providing expert advice and guidance.
So really kind of holding the customer's hand through the decision-making process.
Yeah, making sure they choose the right product for their needs.
I think what's interesting is how both of those approaches are still relevant today, even though the platforms have changed. Like, people still want that information. They still want that guidance. It's all about meeting them where they are in their journey.
And then to really understand how people were actually behaving online, they use this thing called Forrester's Social Technographics Ladder, which categorized people based on how much they were actually participating online.
Okay, I've heard of that. So you've got your creators at the top, right?
Yeah.
The bloggers, the video makers, the ones who are really putting out content. And then you've got your critics who are writing reviews, commenting on stuff.
Yep.
And then your collectors are using things like RSS feeds to gather information. The joiners are on the social networks. The spectators are just kind of passively consuming content. And then at the bottom, you've got your inactives, the ones who aren't really participating online at all.
And they even had data on how different generations were using these platforms, like youth, Gen X, boomers. It's just interesting to see how that kind of generational segmentation was already happening, even though the platforms themselves and the way we use them have obviously changed a lot since then.
But the idea that different generations have different online behaviors, that's still super relevant today.
Well,
It's all about knowing your audience, right? Understanding those nuances can help you create much more targeted and effective marketing campaigns.
now, they really stressed the importance of adding value throughout the customer journey. and they focused a lot on website design.
Oh, websites in 2010, that's a whole other world.
I know, right? They actually showed some examples of effective and ineffective websites. They gave Domino's as a positive example. Easy to navigate,
Yeah.
visually clear, had a clear call to action. Like order now.
Straight to the point. Get that pizza.
Exactly. And then they contrasted that with sites like eDreams, Cheap Luxury Cruises, and Cruise Direct, which they basically said were just cluttered and confusing and not user-friendly at all.
Ouch. So not good examples. I guess even back then, people knew a bad website when they saw one.
And they made this point that effective website design is about more than just making it look pretty. It has to be easy to use. It has to be fast. It has to be visually clear, relevant to the user, transparent, and it has to have that clear call to action.
Makes sense. If people can't figure out how to use your site, they're going to go somewhere else.
Right. And they actually visualize this with a triangle functionality, objective, design, and content. All of these things have to work together.
Like pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah. And they also break down the different roles that a website can play, like transactional, which is like buying something,
Yeah.
informational, providing content, engagement, encouraging interaction, and social, connecting people.
Okay, so different websites can have different goals. Not every site is trying to sell you something directly.
Right. And they use Domino's, again, as an example of that transactional rule with their
Mm.
online ordering system. And then Cadbury, the chocolate company, was used as an example of the engagement role, like they had games and interactive content on their website.
Cadbury's interactive chocolate games. Sounds fun.
Yeah, it sounds delicious.
I guess the point is that you have to think about what you want your website to do and then design it accordingly. Is it about making a sale, providing information, building a community, or something else?
Exactly. And then we get to the really fun part, the digital marketing tools of 2010, starting with SEM, which is search engine marketing. And they break it down into like SEO, which is organic and long-term, and PPC, which is paid and more immediate.
Oh, yeah, SEO and PPC, those are still huge today. But it's
Yeah.
interesting to hear them talking about it back in 2010.
Yeah. And they said, even back then, they recognized that you need both for a well-rounded strategy. SEO is all about optimizing your website to rank higher in search results. And then PPC uses those targeted ads to drive traffic to your site.
I like how they put it. SEO is like the marathon runner, slow and steady, while PPC is the sprinter, quick and impactful. You need both for a winning race.
I like that analogy.
Thanks.
They even had a diagram showing how SEO and PPC work together, with the market, landing pages, your website, everything, to help you achieve those business goals.
So it's like a whole ecosystem, right? All these different parts working together.
Exactly. Next up is display advertising. And they talk about two main approaches: affiliate marketing, which is working with intermediaries, and then independent or direct approaches. Both of these are short-term, more immediate. They can be a little intrusive, but they have really strong branding potential.
So think banner ads, pop-ups, that kind of thing. Yeah, they can be annoying, but they can also be really effective for getting your brand out there.
Then we have email marketing, which they really emphasize that it's cost-effective. You need a database, but it has this potential for really targeted messaging.
Mm.
And you can learn a lot about your market through email marketing.
Yeah, email's not dead. It's still a great way to build relationships with customers and, like you said, learn more about what they want.
Next, they explain CRM, which is customer relationship management. And the whole goal here is to optimize those relationships through targeted and relevant communication.
So, like sending promotions that people actually care about.
Yeah, or providing service updates, technical support, even just sharing information that's relevant to your customers.
It's about building those long-term relationships, not just going for the quick sale.
Exactly.
Ah.
Now, they also talk about landing pages, which are basically any page on a website where visitors land. But they're often used to optimize performance for a specific objective, sometimes for SEO.
So if you click on an ad or a link, the page you land on is the landing page, and it's designed to get you to take a specific action.
Right, like sign up for a newsletter, download a white paper, buy a product. And they stressed how effective landing pages can be because they're so relevant to the target audience. And they can really boost performance, and they can leverage free content to appeal to customers.
It's like giving people exactly what they're looking for at the exact moment they're looking for it.
And they use Google Chrome as an example. You click on a link for Chrome, and you land on a page that's specifically designed to get you to download the browser.
Makes sense. It's a very targeted approach.
Yeah. Next up, we get to social media, which they described as an amplification of offline communication. And they really emphasized its power, the fact that it's public and it's free to access. And they listed, all the benefits: listening to the market, engaging customers, generating awareness, building your brand, and enabling that two-way communication.
I think it's funny how they describe it as an amplification of offline communication, because in some ways, social media has almost become the main form of communication for a lot of people. Like, it's not just amplifying what's happening offline, it's creating its own world.
It's true. It's become its own universe.
But even back then, they were recognizing the power of social media to connect with people and build relationships.
And they even had a list of do-nots for social media.
Yeah.
Don't use it as just another advertising platform. Don't be pushy,
Yeah.
and definitely don't get angry or disrespectful.
Good advice, even today.
And they had this whole list of social media platforms that they were seeing back then. Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, those are the big ones.
MySpace, wow, that takes me back.
But they also mentioned Twitter, forums, community answer sites like Yahoo, social bookmarking sites like Delicious, review sites like Chow, Amazon, and eBay, even photo sharing sites like Flickr, blogs, and video platforms like YouTube.
It's amazing to see how the social media landscape has both expanded and consolidated since then. Some of those platforms are still around, some have disappeared, and a whole bunch of new ones have popped up.
Then we have content syndication, which is basically content that's spread across the internet.
Gotcha.
And they said that RSS was the most common method for that. And while there were services to spread specific content to specific websites, they noted that Google might not be happy about it.
Yeah, content syndication is still a thing today, although the methods and the best practices have definitely changed. Google's always trying to make sure people are creating original, high-quality content.
Finally, they briefly touch on some other tools. Google's Google Maps, Skype, Service Chat, Google Live Search, and presentations.
So many Googles.
I know, right? It's kind of funny to look back and see how much Google was already dominating the online world back then.
It's amazing how much technology has changed in just a few years. Some of those tools we still use, some have been replaced, and a whole bunch of new ones have come along. But it shows how important it is to stay on top of those trends.
And that brings us to the next section of the presentation, which is all about integrating the online and offline worlds.
That's something we talked about earlier. It's all about creating a seamless experience for the customer, no matter how they interact with your brand.
Yeah, and they give some really interesting examples, both good and bad.
Lay it on me.
So one negative example they give is this insurance company called More Than. And basically their customer area on their website, it just lacked any real added value. And they said this actually had consequences for their internal processes.
Ah, so the website wasn't just a problem for customers, it was also creating headaches internally.
Exactly. And they said it affected their brand equity, word of mouth, and even their efficiency.
Ouch. Not a good look.
Yeah.
So a poorly designed website can really have a ripple effect.
They also talk about this direct mail campaign for the Internet World Expo 2010. It was by DMA, I guess, some kind of marketing organization. And they said there was no integration with their phone information service, which ended up causing some issues with brand equity and a loss of efficiency.
Okay, so that's an example of how things can go wrong when you don't think about how your online and offline efforts are working together.
Right. And then they give a positive example, which is Halfords. Remember them? The car and bike people.
Yeah, the ones with the great customer service.
Well, they had this selection tool on their website that was really well integrated with their in-store service.
So customers could do their research online and then go into the store and get expert advice. That's a nice blend of online and offline.
Yeah, and it allowed them to leverage the strengths of both channels. But even with this positive example, they do point out some potential downsides.
Like what?
They said that, if you blur the lines too much between your online and offline messaging, you could potentially dilute your brand or even lose some of your competitive advantage.
So it's a balancing act. You want to create that seamless experience, but you don't want to lose what makes your brand unique.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the Nespresso case study.
Ah, Nespresso, the coffee kings. What did they do?
Their integrated strategy was super successful. They combined this really clever communication campaign, they were strategic about collecting data, and they used their website as a key distribution channel.
Smart move. They used digital to enhance the whole customer experience.
Yeah, and the results speak for themselves. They had high awareness in sales, increased communication with their customers, and they established a really strong distribution channel.
Nespresso is a classic example of how to do it right.
All right, so are you ready for a deep dive into a specific case study?
Hit me with it. I'm ready to see how this all plays out in the real world.
Yeah, here we go.
All right, so this case study focuses on a company called Fernando Torres SA, and they make electric programmable cookers.
Slow cookers, huh? Back in 2010. Not exactly the first thing that comes to mind when you think of like cutting-edge digital marketing. What were they up against?
Well, they had these pretty ambitious growth goals, right? Like they wanted to increase their business by 20% by 2014. And they did their market research, and they found that while people who already had slow cookers seemed to love them, a lot of folks just didn't really see them as all that useful.
So they kind of had a perception problem.
Exactly. Like people thought slow cookers were just for, holidays or special occasions, not something you'd use every day. Plus, the market was getting more competitive, so they needed to find a way to stand out.
So what was their strategy to tackle all of this?
Well, they really focused on, segmentation, targeting, and positioning.
Classic marketing principles.
Exactly. They identified two main groups they wanted to reach. Busy professionals, people who are always short on time, and busy parents, juggling work and kids and a social life.
Makes sense. Those are the people who would really benefit from a time-saving appliance, like a slow cooker.
Right. And their positioning really emphasized how easy their cookers were to use and how much time they could save you. They wanted to shift that perception, from occasional use to like an everyday essential.
So how did they turn that strategy into, concrete marketing objectives?
Okay, so their main marketing objectives were to increase sales by 10% and reach 80% customer satisfaction in their target segments. And they wanted to hit those targets by 2010.
Nice and specific. I like it. Measurable, time-bound. Gotta love it.
Right. You got to have those clear goals. They also had some specific communication objectives. They wanted to achieve 30% brand awareness in both of their target segments, again by 2010.
Wow, 30% brand awareness? That's a pretty big jump. How are they planning on doing that?
Well, they had a multi-pronged approach, They wanted to generate 500 sales per month, and they also wanted to get 75% of their customers using the cookers daily.
Okay, so not just bringing in new customers, but also getting existing customers to
Yeah.
use the product more often. Smart.
Customer acquisition, customer retention, both super important for growth. Now let's talk about their digital marketing objectives. What were they actually trying to achieve online?
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, they set some pretty ambitious goals there, too. They wanted to get 10,000 new visitors to their website every month, and they wanted those visitors to stay on the site for an average of 3 minutes.
Good indicators of engagement. Were they planning to sell the cookers directly through the website?
Yep. One of their objectives was to get 150 orders each month through the website or landing pages.
E-commerce, embracing it early on.
Absolutely. And they were really keen on social media, too. They wanted to get 100 new Facebook followers and 75 new Twitter followers every month.
What about customer reviews? Those are so important for building trust.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They wanted to get 10 customer reviews each month. So they had a really comprehensive digital marketing plan, taking shape. So what did their website look like? What were they doing on social media to achieve these goals?
Yeah, spill the beans.
All right, so their website had a clear call to action, buy from our online store, sign up for Facebook and Twitter, and leave comments. They really focused on creating engaging and informative content, highlighting the benefits and features of their cookers. They had videos, downloadable recipes, share buttons, the whole 9 yards.
Sounds like they were really thinking about that user experience
Yeah.
and encouraging interaction.
Right. And their overall approach was nicely visualized in a diagram they had. They were using PPC and SEO to drive traffic to landing pages, which then led to the website, which was their main sales channel. On Twitter, they were sharing recipes and tips. And Facebook was used for sharing recipes, tips, and they even had contests, focused on like the most visually appealing dish of the week.
So really using each platform for a different purpose, but all working together towards those overall goals.
Exactly. I mean, this case study really shows how even a product like a slow cooker, something you might not think of as inherently digital, can benefit from a smart digital marketing strategy.
Right. It's not just for tech companies or software products. Any business can leverage these principles.
Absolutely. No matter what you're selling, these ideas can help you connect with your audience and grow your business. So before we wrap things up, let's take a step back and think about everything we've uncovered so far.
We've gone through the customer cycle, explored brand equity, delved into those digital tools of the time, and even saw how slow cookers went digital.
It's been quite a journey. What are your biggest takeaways so far? Anything that surprised you? Or maybe something that's still relevant even today?
I'm honestly struck by how many of these fundamentals we've talked about are still applicable today. Sure, the platforms and the technology have changed, but the core principles are the same. Understanding your customer, creating compelling content, delivering a unified brand experience across all your channels, those are timeless.
I completely agree. It's so important to have a strong foundation in those enduring marketing principles. Those never go out of style. Are you ready to wrap up this digital marketing time capsule exploration?
Let's do it. Okay, so final part of our trip back to 2010. We've seen how they were thinking about digital marketing, all the different aspects.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, from the customer journey and brand building to the actual tools they were using back then, even those slow cookers going digital.
Now we need to step back,
Mm.
see the bigger picture. What can we learn from, these early digital marketers? What works for them? What maybe didn't work so well?
Right. What can we take away from their successes and their maybe their learning experiences?
The presentation actually ends by posing some questions to the audience, and
Mm.
obviously we don't have their answers, but it's interesting to think about, how we would answer those same questions today.
Yeah, I wonder how things have changed and how they've stayed the same.
So one question is was this presentation itself relevant and valuable to you? Which is a question we should always be asking ourselves, right? With our own marketing efforts, are we actually connecting with our audience? Are we providing something of value?
Absolutely. You got to make sure you're giving people what they want, what they need.
They also asked if the presentation was too fast, too condensed, too basic, or too advanced, which again highlights how important it is to, know your audience and tailor your message accordingly.
Right. Like, are you speaking their language? Are you meeting them where they are in terms of their understanding?
And then lastly, they asked, what else do you want to learn? Which is a great question, right? Because it shows that they were open to feedback and they understood that, learning is an ongoing process.
And in digital marketing, things are always changing, so you got to be constantly learning and adapting.
It really struck me, going through this presentation, how many of the core principles are still so relevant today.
Totally. The tools and platforms might change, but the fundamentals are the same. Understanding your customer, creating engaging content, providing a smooth experience across all those channels. Those are things that will never go out of style.
And that's a really valuable takeaway for anyone working in marketing. Whether you're just starting out or you've been doing for years, it's important to stay up to date on the latest trends, but you also need that strong foundation in those basic marketing principles.
Couldn't agree more.
So I think one of the key takeaways from our little trip back in time here is that digital marketing isn't just about, mastering the latest tools or platforms. It's about taking those timeless principles and applying them in a way that really connects with today's digital consumers.
And we've seen how companies were trying to figure that out back in 2010. And honestly, it's a challenge we're still facing today. How do you strike that balance between, using those new technologies and staying true to those core marketing principles?
Right. It's that balance between innovation and those foundational ideas that really drive meaningful connections and, results.
Well, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the digital marketing world of 2010.
A fascinating glimpse into the past, and hopefully some valuable lessons for the present and the future.
Absolutely. And a huge thank you to London Heartbeats Academy UK for their incredible support in putting this all together. They offer over 150 courses on all sorts of topics.
And to stay updated on all things learning, make sure to subscribe to their social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. You won't want to miss out on future deep dives like this one. We'll be back soon with another fascinating look at the world of marketing and technology. Until then, keep those digital marketing wheels turning.